Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Emilija Martic on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Canada. We got another Canadian on the podcast. I might as well rename this podcast something about Canada, but hey, I love having them on. They're awesome, and she's on here to share her health and fitness journey. If you couldn't tell, she's a bodybuilder. I mean, some of these guests I have to remind people, but like you're one of the ones where it's like, okay, we know ahead of time, but first off, Amelia, thank you so much for coming on.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
That's another Canadian thing that I told her about before. No worries. They say all the time too. That's one thing I picked up a little bit, I think, from my secondhand contact with all these Canadians. But before we get into all that, this is a question to ask every single time, no matter how many times people say, "Oh, you just ask us way too much." What's the weather like today?
Cloudy and muggy. Still waiting for summer, unfortunately.
I mean, it was high 70s then. I went for my walk at like noon and I got back at like 2 because I got lost, which is, a whole different topic to talk about. But the sun came out at like 1 o'clock, so it really sucked. When you have this Norwegian skin of mine, any sun contact, you're really rolling the dice there. So, I hey, But before we get into, my skin woes, because trust me, that's a whole, 10-hour podcast in and of itself. To start things off, why don't you just give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to become a bodybuilder and how that led to where you're at right now?
Wow. So I guess like most, I played a lot of team sports, so hockey and rugby. After high school, I didn't really have a lot of time for sports teams. I was going to school full time and I was working full time. I was actually going to be an accountant, and I kind of stopped going to the gym. And I was always reading these articles about how accountants gain weight in the field and stuff. And I was like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "This can't happen." So I ended up changing fields and getting my kinesiology degree. Met a few people, hired a trainer, and the next thing you know, I was kind of competing, and I just fell in love with it because I can do it on my own time. I don't really have to depend on other people, and I can still get other things in life that needs to be done. So working and school and stuff like that. So it just kind of really blended well with my lifestyle.
You were like the first person on this podcast that literally changed their career due to the fact that they didn't want to put on weight afterwards. That's so. What was that like? Explain to people like, oh, why aren't you our accountant anymore? It's because I just I don't want to gain weight. How did they that if I had a friend that said that, I'd be like, okay, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, I was in high school, and they was always
Oh,
making us do this test and what would be good with your interest now and stuff. And accounting just kept popping up, and my parents are like, no matter what year it is, everyone's going to need an accountant. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life, so I kind of was like, all right, I guess I'm going to go do accounting. And like 2 years in, I was like, this really isn't for me at all. So
I have friends that are accountants, and they know they are, and I do love them, but they are some of the most boring people on the planet. And it's
yeah.
just, it's like, it's one of those jobs where, they might as well, have a bullet and a gun, on everyone's desk, just in case they just get so. Because I mean, more power to them. They do a lot of the work that needs to be done. That a lot of people just can't sit on a desk for extended period of time and do a lot of hard, confusing math. But hey, more power to them. But were you always familiar with the sport of bodybuilding, or was it something that you discovered? How did you get introduced into the sport?
Well, it's funny. My mom, when I was growing up, always told me I should compete. And I was like, no, I don't want to get that muscular. I don't want to get those big shoulders. And I ended up meeting a guy that I was really interested in, and he competed. And that kind of, then I was aware that that was like a thing. And I started looking into it. And yeah, and then I hired my coach and kind of went from there.
Another first. So your mom was actually telling you like, hey, you should compete. You should do. Why were you just like one of those kids that was just like naturally genetically muscular? Or?
Yeah, I guess my dad's from Europe, and his side of the family, all the women are a bit more muscular. So I already had a really good base for it, and I played rep hockey, right, and rugby, so I had really good legs and stuff. And but I mean, when I was going to high school, girls in the gym wasn't really a thing yet. It was still kind of frowned upon, I guess, kind of thing. We weren't really encouraged to do it. So yeah.
And that gets me right into genetics because I love and hate genetics. I mean, I love it because, some people, it makes life easier for some people, but also I hear this all the time. Oh my God, I want his arms. I want her abs. I want their back. And you just want to strangle them because you're like, you can train just as hard as this person. You can eat what they're eating. You can do the same supplementation. You're not going to see the same results. Unfortunately, people are just built differently, but like you said, you're a little bit more blessed on the muscular side, but everyone always has that one body part that really, really takes off when they start taking things seriously in the gym. And they have that one body part that they just have to drag behind to catch up. What was one body part that really took off for you? And what was one body part that you've just had to drag behind throughout your journey?
I guess I always had really big legs. So that wasn't really the main focus during training. Obviously, they still needed to be worked on, but it was my shoulders that needed the most development. They were the hardest. I've had to train them 2 times a week since 2011 after my first show, and I haven't really like stepped back from that, and that's why I'm able to have the size of the shoulders that I do have. But yeah, they didn't come easy, that's for sure.
That, I mean, almost every woman that I've had on has said the same thing about shoulders, where it's like, yeah, I think it's just for women too. I mean, that's one of the harder parts. And yeah, a lot of people just don't understand. You just have to train them into oblivion a lot of these times to really, see some results. But I normally ask what was your parents' and friends' reaction like when you announced that I want to be a bodybuilder. We already know that your mom was on board since you were a kid, basically. But what were the rest of your family and friends' reaction like when you just announced, like, hey, I want to give this bodybuilding a try?
I guess my dad was kind of, I mean, he's European, old school, very old school. So it was a little bit of a shock for him, seeing his daughter be more muscular than his son, I suppose, even though my brother's pretty muscular. But yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a shock for him, but he adapted. He knows that I enjoy it and he accepts that. So but yeah, my cousin's a pro bodybuilder too, and he started after I did. So it was kind of, I guess it kind of runs in the family a little bit.
I am so lucky you're not my sister because I would be so pissed. I'd be like, okay, I'm not letting my sister get bigger than me, so now I got to go start going to the gym religiously then and stuff like that. So thank God that I mean I only have two brothers, but if I did have a sister and she started like getting bigger than me, I was like, okay, I need to step things up a notch right now and really get back on that. So that's
He
that.
definitely started hitting the gym a bit harder, that's for sure.
Hey, that's one of the best motivators out there if someone else is
Yeah.
in your family like that. But I mean, this is also so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport, and a lot of people just don't understand that because they'll see you in public and be like, "Oh, Amelia, you look great," but they don't understand the mental transformation that's taken place as well, which is 100 times more important than any of the physical changes will ever have on you. What has this journey been like for you mentally?
Oh wow. I've learned a lot. I've had to grow mentally every prep, but stronger. Learn how to manage and deal things differently. I remember I did my first prep and my mom almost begged me not to do another prep again because I was so bad. But it was a learning experience, and I guess mentally I just got better at being aware of being hangry, and having to sacrifice other things to go to the gym and not be able to go to family functions and stuff. So it wasn't always the easiest, but I've learned to get a good balance in my life right now. So
How have you learned to cope with the hangry side? Because I'm one of those people where I could be hangry for the thousandth time, and I'm still going to be as upset as I was the first time, and it's still going to be just as hard for me.
um, I guess drinking a lot of water or just kind of being active and doing something else to take my mind off being hungry. Either if that's just going for a walk with my dog or reading a book or anything like that. So
Here's the problem though. I'm one of those unlucky people where if I did go for a walk, someone would like be putting their apple pie like out on their windowsill and I'd have to smell it, or they'd be having a bonfire and they'd be cooking something and I would that's just my luck right there. So for me, I basically just gotta lock myself in a room somewhere and just be like, okay, just wait until the feeling passes. But yeah, I mean that hangry side is, it is brutal at times, but I mean, when you were getting into the sport, did you have any reservations at all about the sport? Because when I talk to people in the general public, like I told you before, there's so many myths about this sport, and especially when you add on the female side. I mean, it's like 10 times more, of the myth side of it. But was there anything that you were concerned about, or was it one of those things where you just want to dive right in and see what happens?
I guess more like myth stuff, like not having to do hours and hours of cardio. You don't necessarily have to starve yourself daily. I mean, a little bit of hunger is normal. But I mean, if you're hungry at 16 weeks out and doing an hour cardio a day, I think you're setting yourself up for a little bit of trouble, which a lot of people think that that's what's necessarily to get to your goals, but it's not.
I mean, I cannot lie when I tell you when I was about 18 or 19, I was one of those guys that thought that if I did like 2 hours of cardio a day, it would solve everything. And because I was young and I had that metabolism, it worked for a while. But then, like 3, 4 months in, you're like, okay, yeah, this is not like, and
Yeah.
that's when I really started, the whole weight training aspect. And I still know some women who to this day, I'll talk to them and I'll be like, oh, what were you doing right now? I was like, oh, I just went on like a 10-mile run or something like that. And I was like, okay, well. And then she's like, yeah, I did that yesterday too. And I was like, okay, well, are you training for a marathon? No, I'm just trying to get in shape. And then I got to sit them down talk to them for like 15 minutes and be like, okay, come on now. So I've done that talk more times than I could count, honestly. But
People have a hard time getting that concept, right? I'm not too sure why, but I guess maybe it's just from social media and stuff like that. So
well, and one of the things that a lot of people just don't understand too as well is like a lot of people have, especially women, have that assumption that if I walk into the gym and I even see a dumbbell, I'm going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And I've said this a million times. I will spend my entire life savings to train with you once then to find out how you did that. But did you ever have that fear when you're getting started? And even if you didn't, I bet you hear that almost daily. How do you like to respond to that?
oh, I hear girls that they're like, "Oh, I won't lift up anything heavier than 10 pounds," or they're sitting there and doing band work. And I was like, I honestly didn't get build any muscle by lifting weights that I could do like 100 reps with, or just by doing band work and stuff. So,
And I've always told people it's like some of these women too. I was like, the purse that you carry weighs like 5 pounds, and you're not getting any muscle from lugging that thing around 24/7. Which is, I
yeah,
mean,
that's a good example.
I had a friend in college who I don't know if it was a dead sorority sister in her purse or something like that, but that thing was super heavy. So I don't know what was going on there. If she had whatever, and I just told her, I was like, you're carrying that thing around every day. Are you hulking out and stuff like that? And she's like, oh no. And I was like, well, pot meat kettle basically and stuff like that. So that's my story on that that sort of thing. But I mean,
Good one.
nutrition, let's be honest, it has the vast majority of any results that you'll ever see, and a lot of people do struggle with that as well. But what were some of the big nutritional changes that you made when you first started to take things seriously in the gym?
Well, I've been competing since 2011 and I took 5 years off. So my nutrition for this prep has been a little bit different. I was diagnosed with colitis. Whether that was onset from all my years of dieting, um, no one really knows. But I guess I'm really like sensitive to food. So I was eating foods that I normally wouldn't eat before, like bread, or I couldn't have lots of amounts of rice. I can't really eat fish, so I never ate a fish meal this prep. So a lot of it just came from chicken and beef products. I can't, I guess this prep, I wasn't able to eat vegetables. My stomach can't digest them very well, so it was really hard to use those as fillers. I did eat a lot of salad though, but I mean, it's just water. But what my mind, like, if I can see a big volume, it might make my stomach feel like it's actually getting food. So those are my big changes since I first started to my recent prep now that I just did.
For all of the people that aren't so knowledgeable in the medical field, myself included, what is colitis? Because I honestly don't know what that is.
Oh, so my body, my intestines bleed. I have a hard time digesting a lot of foods, so they get inflamed, and that's basically a small version of it,
What did I tell you about eating those razor blades? Come on.
right?
No, but yeah, now I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but I've had people that have had almost every disease known to man, and you think that I would pick up on after a while, but no, I just don't. But how do you deal with that being a bodybuilder as well? Because like you said, you're a little bit still picky about some foods, but like anyone that has any disease at all and is a bodybuilder, I mean, being a bodybuilder is hard enough in and of itself, but when you add any disease on it, I mean, it just takes a special type of person to do that. So how do you cope with that?
I just kind of have to realize that eat the foods that my body likes and not thinking that I can't eat it because it's not bodybuilding or healthy compared to like the norm, like the bread, for example. I remember back in the day, bread was a big no no, but honestly, bread is like one of the things I can only digest. So I ate a lot of that during my prep now. So just kind of changing your mentality, how you think of the foods that you can and can't eat. Because in the end, I mean, 5 grams of fat's 5 grams of fat. It doesn't matter from what source it is, right?
If they come up with a calorie or carb free bread, I am screwed. I would just, yeah, like we're talking 15 pounds a day. I would just gulp down. I love bread so much, and that's my Achilles tendon right there. And that's, bread
Warm bread.
is.
Yeah, it's a killer.
I go to Brugger's once a month. And that's my cheat where I just get, like 3 or 4 bagels and I just go to town and, my stomach hurts, but, it's worth it. It is 100% worth it. Anyone that says that it's not worth it, no, it's worth it if you got the right food in you. But I mean, this lifestyle too, there's so many things that impact it, but one thing that I would have never guessed in a million years when I first started this podcast that is the hardest thing for so many of these guests that I have on is posing. Would never guessed it. I always would assume that it would have been like the training or the nutrition, but for so many of the guests, they've said that posing is the hardest thing for them. What is your experience with posing like?
Um, I mean, I remember when I first started off in figure and trying to do a back pose and spreading my lat. It drove me nuts. Like, I couldn't, like, do the mind to muscle connection, and then eventually, after a couple weeks, I was only able to engage, like, one side of my back and not the other, and it was really frustrating, but, I mean, once you kinda got that down, it just kinda comes really natural. I wouldn't say I've really had a hard time posing, but, I mean, when it comes to my posing routines, I'm very nervous. I don't like to be the center of the focus and everyone watching me. So it's hard knowing that everyone in the audience is just staring directly at me and I'm worried that I'm going to mess up. Um, but other than that, yeah.
Has it been easier since the first time you've went on stage, or is it still one of those things where it's just as hard for you even after doing, all the shows that you've done?
I guess when I was a novice, the more I did more novice shows, the more confident I came in. But I was always still nervous. But then when I got to the pro level, I felt like it was a whole different show just because all the athletes were high level and I was even more nervous. I didn't want to mess up in front of them. So I'm equally just as nervous as when I first started as an amateur. But I mean, it kind of fuels me to, I guess, when I'm nervous and happy and excited, it's like the perfect combination. So
Nerves aside, when you finally get to walk on that stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on, other than your nerves, what is that feeling like for you when you finally get to, after doing all the stuff that prep entails and just all of the pain and suffering to finally be able to show off what you've been working so hard on?
yeah, I think it's just more of a self accomplishment that I didn't give up. And even when I wanted to or thought about it, I kept pushing through. And every time I'll step on stage, my package gets better and better. And that's the only thing that I really strive to do. So just knowing that I didn't give up on myself and being able to accomplish something that I set out to do, I guess that's really internally rewarding for me. Yeah.
And out of the poses that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite?
My least favorite is the front abdominal thigh pose. And my favorite pose, and the one that everyone really likes, is my side tricep.
The ab shot has been the least favorite 99% of the time, so they got to
Oh,
change
is
it.
it? Good.
They got to change it because like it's so hard to make it look natural and make it look smooth and stuff. It's just an unnatural
Yeah,
pose, so it's yeah.
it doesn't look feminine, and it just doesn't. It looks. I feel like a lot of people look blocky, and there's no like curves to it, right?
It doesn't even look masculine either. So I mean, it's just yeah. They got to. I mean, obviously you got to have a shot that shows off the abs because they're such a major body part. But it's like they got to find a way to make it better than that, at least in my opinion. But I
I
mean,
agree.
for so many of the guests that I have on winning their pro card, that's the highlight of their career, just because that is the affirmation of all the hard work that they put in. They can compete in pro shows. What was that moment like for you when they announced your name and you realized, oh my God, I'm a pro now?
Wow. Um, it's kind of like a milestone in your life, I suppose. Like just like getting married. Um, it was, yeah. I guess one of the highlights of my life. I suppose I'll never forget about it. It's very rewarding. Yeah.
Were you the crier, or were you just the freaker outer, or were you just the person that just stood like a stone? Where did you fall on that? Because I found that that's like the three main responses that people have.
I'm not a crier. I was just smiling a lot. Just very happy. I'm not a screamer or anything either. So
I would be the guy that's just like, where the hell am I? Basically, like, I don't know. Is this actually happening? Like, pinch me, and then someone would pinch me, and then because I'm so drained and depleted, yeah. I don't know how that would
I'm not
entail,
a
but
crier.
oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean,
You have all the emotions.
oh yeah, 100%. And now my favorite question to ask: what is your go-to post-show meal?
Favorite? Oh, I'm a burger person. Burger, onion rings, like calamari. I go to a couple restaurants. I like restaurant hop for a few days.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Give me $1,000 and take me to Five Guys and I'll just buy them out for the night and just say, like you guys are gonna feed me until I puke, pass out, or throw up. Either way, I'm getting my money's worth. So that's at least where I fall on that. But I mean, another major thing that isn't talked about as much as it should is post-show blues, because a lot of people that aren't that familiar with the lifestyle do not understand that this look that you present on stage, it's not sustainable. You're not going to look like this 365 days out of the year, unfortunately. I mean, you have to put on weight just to maintain a somewhat healthy, you know, body system. But what was that like for you when you first realized that, like, hey, out of all the hard work that I do, I am going to still have to put on weight? And has it gotten easier for you to accept that as your career in the sport has gone on?
Yes, I guess when I was younger, it was really hard. It was really hard for me to put on the weight, and I would always put on a little bit of extra weight. In society, girls always have to be lean and thin, and so that was really hard. But as I got older, I kind of realized that I don't really need to. Other people's opinions don't really matter or make me me. So as long as I'm happy, so if eating that extra burger meal and that being 5 pounds heavier, that's totally completely fine with me now. I mean, yes, I would like to have my abs in all year round, but there are other things in life that you have to enjoy and compromise. Your show physique will obviously come back. So you just kind of have to go and ride with all the different levels of weights that you are during the year. So
Well, you mentioned society, and you got my next question perfectly ahead of time. You're not the average looking woman. If you're to walk out in public dressed the way that you are right now, you are going to get stares just because it's human nature. And I like to compare it to being like a mini celebrity where it's just, yeah, you can, do nothing and still, I mean, especially as you get closer to your prep. Going to grocery stores, that's the number one thing that I've heard of where it's like, that's the hardest thing. But is it easier for you to sort of I mean, like you said, you realize that like you don't have to go by what people think, but it's like you're still going to hear people's opinions, no matter how much you try to put off. But has it gotten easier for you to sort of deal with that extra added attention as your career's gone on, or is it still one of those things where you're like, okay, this is weird still?
I was kind of weirded out at first, and now I kind of just block it out because it's so norm for me to see people staring at me, and it's whatever, like, they're looking at me, it shouldn't really affect me in my life, so they can do whatever they want. I mean, my boyfriend and my mom, they always walk behind me and they see everybody like staring, turning around as they're walking past me. And recently I've had a lot of young females come up to me, and they're like, they want to be strong like me. And I feel like I'm kind of being a good role model for them. And it's nice to see that it's becoming more accepted for women to have muscle. It's not just a man thing anymore. And I don't like to fit in. I want to be different. So yeah, so I am who I am, and I love my physique, and yeah.
Are you kidding me? I would too. One of the reasons why I never competed too is because like during those last few weeks, I wouldn't even wear clothes. Are you kidding me? Just like to show off. So for the safety of the public, I would just, it's for the best, really. But you know, there's just so many little things of this lifestyle, and like we talked about before, I mean, that's the main response that I get from people who just listen to the podcast just because of me, and there's like, oh, these they just seem to work out a lot and they go on stage and they pose, and it's like, no, there's a lot more to it. But one of those little things too that isn't talked about, I don't really know if it's ever really been talked about, is the clothing options that for a woman with muscles. I mean, your clothing options are severely limited. I don't care what anyone says. You basically have to have like two wardrobes as well, your prep wardrobe and your off-season wardrobe. How do you do with the fact that like you can go to the biggest retailer on the planet and you will still be hard pressed at times to find clothing options that fit?
So I wear a lot of stretchy things. Um, Usually my shirts don't involve sleeves because if they fit me in the arms, they're very loose in my midsection. So I kind of have to pick and choose. Do I want it form fit around my waist or do I want sleeves? I basically live in spandex. I do have a couple of jeans that are really stretchy and very comfortable to wear. But yeah, I guess I'm not a blouse person anyways. I feel like I look awkward in them.
Well, and anyone, don't invite these people to weddings too, because you're just adding extra headed pain and struggle for them, just for that reason alone. Because like, yeah, I mean, someone out there should be coming up with like some new clothing line for healthy and fit people, but especially women, but it hasn't came out yet. But hey, that's $1 million idea for anyone out there who's thinking of something at least. So, get on it. But just in this lifestyle in general too, the one thing that pains me the most to hear the word or to just experience it is cardio. I hate it more than life itself. And when I say cardio, I mean actual running. Like I can go on walks for forever. I do that almost daily where I live next to a nature park that I go and walk on. But what is your relationship like with cardio?
Wow. So growing up, I used to love going for runs. Thinking about that now, and I'm not too sure why I love running. Because ask me to do it now, and I will tell you no. I don't mind. I do a lot of spin biking or like the stairmasters and a lot of hiking. So anything that's kind of more low intensity and long duration, I enjoy that. I'm just not a fan of having my heart being pumped out of my chest when I'm running or doing anything too physically active in cardio sense. But yeah,
Yeah, that happened to me today because, like I told you, I got lost in part of the nature park, a place that I'd never been in before because it's like freaking 20 miles of park stuff. So like you can go and experience new stuff. And I went to a new corner and literally it's an incline where it's like a straight up hill. So I had to try to go up that. It's almost like American Ninja Warrior where they do the thing at the end, except it was just a little bit more curvier. So like you could walk up it, but like yeah, that was the one moment where I was just almost out of breath because it was a steep climb too. But I had to get up there because I wanted to find out where I was first of all because I got lost. So everyone, make sure that you have a plan too of like where you're gonna go if you're ever gonna go out on walks. I just gotta remind people that because I have another story that's going to take way too long, but I did get lost all the way up in Duluth, and that's a whole different story for a whole nother podcast where I almost died because I ran out of water and it was like 6 hours. So I'm not gonna tell those stories because it will take up like a
I have a
really long
couple
time.
of stories too.
Yeah, we won't get into that because the next time we ever on, we can just do our hiking, misadventure stories because that's entertaining enough as it is. But yeah, and I mean, going off of that, so moving on, I mean, sleep is another thing that, especially as you get in prep, people suffer with it. It's the most important thing, and just in life in general. But how do you deal with some of the lack of sleep that you go through as a bodybuilder? Because for me, if I don't get enough sleep, like you're going to be very hard pressed to see me go to a gym if I get like less than 4 hours of sleep. That's just how I am.
Yeah. I honestly, people don't realize how important sleep is. So I honestly try to schedule my sleep so that I at least get 8 hours. I will often move things to different days if it's going to affect my sleeping pattern because I don't want to do anything half-ass. I want to do everything to my best ability, and I know if I'm lacking sleep, that's not the case. So scheduling sleeping time is like a high priority, especially in my recent prep that I just did. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to have those nights where I just tell myself like, hey, I'm not going to get that much sleep tonight. I'm just going to have to deal with it. But yeah, I try to like move things around as well. But in this whole lifestyle that you do with bodybuilding, what is your favorite part about the lifestyle and what is your least favorite part about the lifestyle?
I guess my favorite part is just physically and mentally pushing myself, just pushing the boundaries and seeing exactly how far I can go before I break. I do have my moments. My least favorite thing, not being able to eat donuts every day.
You haven't found any of those protein donuts or anything like that?
Yes, but if I eat one, I'm gonna end up eating like five of them.
Yeah. I've had some guests send me some of their cooking that they do, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Protein, anything with protein in it when it comes to cupcakes or donuts, yeah, it might taste good, but it's not. It doesn't have the juice. It doesn't
Who
have the
said
same
them to
taste.
you then?
Oh yeah, it doesn't. But I mean, yeah, I'll eat them, and I think they're good. But it's like, no, you cannot replace a good cupcake or a good, slice of cake or a good piece of pie. But they're getting close. So who knows? 10 to 15 years now, I might not be able, to tell the difference. But if someone were to also walk up to you and say, like Amelia, we made the decision. You can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it. What would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
One thing I could change? Oh, I don't know.
I can give you mine while you think.
Okay.
Well, prize money first, duh. I mean, like, I don't get how that's,
Oh, go on.
Yeah, and that's another one that we get. See, like these competitors are so repressed on the prize money thing that like they don't even think about it first off because it's just. But like honestly, it's like my whole thing is like if you're a pro in the sport, you should not have to have a 9 to 5 job. Like you should be supported enough where you can just make this your lifestyle and your job because like this is hard enough as it is. Without getting into the financial aspect of this sport, where it's like people are losing money doing this sport, and that's another thing that like just made me almost lose my mind the first time that I really came to gripes with that. But like, yeah, if they could just a stipend, it's not even a lot, like maybe just like $30,000, $40,000 just for a year, just for a competitor, just so that they have a base. So like, yeah, they can focus more on this because It would make things so much easier, but also judging too, where it's like I hear so many stories from so many people from so many shows where they compete one weekend and then 2 weeks later with the same lineup, they go from placing first to placing like fifth or sixth the next lineup, and it was the same package. Like you could tell, just to have more of a cohesive, like this is exactly what we want from all of the judges, because like especially it's a waste of money for some people. Like if you go to a show knowing that, or you find out that the judges didn't like your package when you could have easily won a different show, it's like, well, then why was I even here? Just to have that overall where it's like, this is exactly what we're looking for, just so that people could better understand, and there won't be any of those mix ups where it's like, I got second place just because someone thought that I didn't look as good and then everyone else. I mean, it's like human error. Don't even get me started as a baseball pitcher. There are times I told the catcher, it's like, don't even block this one. Just let it go behind you and hit the ump, basically. But like, that's my thing at least.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I kind of maybe add on to that if there would be certain like I guess like requirements because everyone that competes at the pro level doesn't necessarily have a pro level physique all the time. There are some people that show.
Especially the ones like that I've talked to who they win their pro card in their first ever show because like no one else was there really, and then they're just like, I'm gonna go do a pro show next week, and it's like, well, good luck.
Yeah, they've done a lot of rearranging of how to get your pro card, and it's a lot harder back in the day where you had to work up in tiers and win shows, but now you just have to get top three in a novice and you can go win your pro card. So
I mean, they're still in the states. Some instances I've talked to people where it's like, yeah, I won my first show because there was like only like two other people there and they were not in shape as well. And it's like, okay, well then what are you doing there? So yeah, I agree with that too. Where it's like they need to be able to be like, you have to have something to step on a pro. It shouldn't be like where you have to qualify for the Olympia, but it's like you need to present a package that it's you're not just gonna be like me on that stage really, where it's like, yeah, you give me like a year to prepare and I might give you something that's a tenth of the way worthwhile, but it's like me now, it's like, no, that's not gonna fly. But just like this lifestyle in general, it's so taxing and so trying that even I myself asked this at least once a podcast. Why do these people do this to themselves? Why do they put themselves through this? Especially after hearing these prep brain stories and all the stuff that it entails. I was like, why do they do this? How do they pull through? And I bet you still hear that from a lot of people too. It's like, why do you compete in this sport? Why do you do this to yourself? And so what's your why that you like to answer with when people ask you that?
um because I like the how hard it is, and I just like the mental and physical um wait, let me reword that. Um it's the mentality and the physical aspect of it, of how not everybody can do it, and it is challenging, and I just like challenging myself and being able to accomplish things and setting new challenges along like a progress of a prep. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, I've heard so many different answers to that question, and it's like I'm making my own compilation video. It's like, and I'm just gonna title it like female bodybuilders answer why they compete and stuff like that. And I've already got like like 50 of my guests. It took me to like podcast 500 to finally realize that I should ask that question, which shows my intelligence and my stuff. But so we slowly got there. But yeah, it's grueling, and we talked. You mentioned it briefly. Like everyone has those days. Like you even have those days where like you don't want to do it. You get up and you're just like, okay, screw this. I do not want to go to the gym. I do not want to do cardio. The one thing that I think differentiates the general public from bodybuilders, the general public, yeah, they'll be like, okay, I won't do it, and they don't do it. But bodybuilders just tend to have that extra drive, that extra gear that just says, no, we're gonna get this done. Where do you think that drive comes from for you?
um because going to do something I didn't want to do and accomplishing it is a that feeling is so much better than being disappointed when you say no and you don't do it. Because like there are days where I said I'm not going to do it, and the next day I feel like I'm disappointed in myself. I'm better than that, and I felt like that way too many times, and I just don't want to feel like that. So I know the feeling of just getting it done, even though I don't want to, is a lot more self rewarding than anything.
Have you learned as a person like to be able to let go of things a little bit more? Because like you said, I have those days too where like if I don't get my workout in, it was hard for me at first to sort of let that go and just not like focus on that even after like I hit 5 straight workouts in a row like the whole next week, to still not be like, oh, that one time last week. Do you find that it's been easier for you to sort of let go, not just in bodybuilding, but just in things in general life since you started this sport?
Yeah, I've learned to realize not to dwell on things because dwelling on it isn't going to change what's already been done. if anything, is going to negatively impact you as you're continuing on. So if you just let it go and start fresh and not having to worry about whatever that mess up was, you'll just be in a better spot mentally.
Yeah, which as you can tell, I'm an overthinker, so good luck with that with me, But it's slowly getting better, I should say. But I mean, followed you on Instagram, and you've already competed in shows this year. But what are your plans for the rest of the year?
I have another one lined up. But for now, I'm just gonna enjoy summer. I want to do some dirt biking. I just bought a new street bike, so I want to kind of do that and not be in um what is it called, prep brain. So
Do you find that, like, as you do other activities that you might have done when you were not as muscular and in shape, that the activities become harder? Because, like, I had times when I was in really good shape in college where I would do an activity, like I would go swimming or I would do something where it's like it would be harder just because you have more size and stuff like that. Or even with driving too, sometimes it might be a little bit harder just to like rotate, even for when I was in my biggest phase. But like, did you ever find that, or is it one of those things where you're just like, it's not that prevalent?
the only time I really notice anything like that is if I go on hikes. Yeah, the little bit of extra weight does make a difference. I guess my cardiovascular kind of declines, but other than that, I'm not, I don't really notice anything too drastic that way.
The only thing for me was when I went to go to the mountain to pitch again after I'd put on about like 30 pounds of muscle from the last time I did. And it's like your legs, it's just hard to rotate and like with the throwing motion. Like I could do it like easily, but it was just like it was a little bit more panting than I did before just because it's, you got, like you said, you got a lot more weight to work with. And yeah, biking too became so much harder for me where I was like, I could normally do, like 10 miles or something like that. And then now it's like when I'm on mile 8, it's like I'm almost out of breath. And I was like, well, maybe it's just the whole cardio aspect, which I mean, I'm not going to end the podcast talking about cardio, so we're gonna skip right through there because I would consider myself a failure at life if excuse me, if I did that. But do you find that bodybuilding is different for Canadians than it might be for Americans? Because like I've talked to at least 30 or 40 Canadians on this podcast, so they're like almost 10% of the guests that I've had on, and a lot of them say that there are a few differences. But do you yourself find any differences between bodybuilding in Canada versus America?
I guess there's more of a, it's more well known in the States as compared to Canada. There's more opportunities down there versus there's not so much up in Canada. Um, but other than that, I mean,
They need to make a pro show up there in Canada too, because that's the one thing that I found out that I was like, wait, they don't have a pro show up there in Canada?
yeah, we have a pro show. I just did two of them.
Oh wait, oh yeah, that's right, Vancouver. Or no, it was a pro. Was it? They don't have pro qualifiers, or they don't have.
No, we have that too.
Okay, well, I get my. I taught.
Both
I
of
don't.
them did were a pro qualifier
Yeah,
show.
I don't. Okay, yeah, I get everyone. I get brain farts to myself. Everyone, I talk to. That might be it. No, it's Australia that I was thinking of. Yeah, shit. Yeah, because I have a few Aussies on too, so I get all these countries mixed up. Good God, I need to take a break every once in a while, everyone, because like I talk to some. See, the thing is with Canadians, they don't have like such a pronounced accent as like an Australian or an Irish or a person from Ireland or a person from the UK or a person from New Zealand. So it's like you get. Don't even get me started on this. I'm going to cause a whole tangent right now and go out. You can tell my brain just one of those things where it's like everyone's that I talk to is like, oh, if you don't get enough sleep, just take some coffee or some 5 hour energy. It's like, no, because my head would fall off. That's or my head would explode. So it's for the
Yeah.
safety of the public. But I'd love to have you on a year from now just to talk about what you've been up to and just your what's been going on. Where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved when we have you on a year from today?
Um, Obviously making to the Olympia stage. If not this year, next year for sure. Um, yeah, I don't know. Kind of just doing what I'm doing now, but just growing my online business for training and starting up another little company that I haven't quite introduced to the public yet. So that's kind of going on. I started my career in electrical this year too, so hopefully I'll be a little further down the road in that journey next year too.
People do not understand those electricians and those people that work in electric. I mean, they make bank. I have a friend that did that. You only go to college for 2 years down here, and you save a lot of money. And I mean, yeah, if I could go back and do it, I might change things up again. But it's like, there's that. But with online training, because I found that to be such a fascinating thing, where it's like you don't have to meet the people in person, you don't have to do all that. What is one aspect about online training that you like, and what is one aspect that you wish would be improved on when it comes to online training?
Um, The one thing I like about online training is that I like being able to provide everybody with the tools that they need to do. And then it's your responsibility to get it done. It's your responsibility to put as much effort into this program as you want to. I'm not going to hold your hand, but I am there to help you. If you ask for help, I'm there. But I'm not going to sit there and like hit you on the wrist because you're not following your meal plan or you decided not to go to the gym. I kind of leave that to my clients. Yeah.
What is one aspect that you wish would just be improved on a little bit that like
Improved on, I guess something that I'm kind of improving on yearly is just being able to provide the information in a more clear and precise manner so that everyone at all levels can understand. So I kind of have different tiering systems. So somebody who is training pro for 10 years, their program structure might be look a little different than when I have somebody who's an entry level to come in. Their program might be a bit more detailed, a little more laid out, not as much flexibility until they learn different aspects of things. Yeah.
I mean, that and the biggest thing that I learned from starting something like a podcast and doing everything, from social media is that so many things get lost in translation too, where it's like if someone was just face to face, like I've had text conversations too, where it's like someone might tell you something and there's five different possibilities that you can infer from what they said. And then you're just like, you gotta like, do I know the person enough that like I can tell that like they meant it like that way or that? So that's another thing too, where it's like with anything doing online where you're dealing with a lot of people, that was one thing that I really had to learn, where it's like you got to be a little bit more literal with people than just like a little more, because I'm a little bit more of a sarcastic person in real life, so it's hard for me to really translate that. But lastly, we can see tattoos all over your arm right there. I love to ask, what are the tattoos, what do they mean?
Um, they don't really mean anything, but I have like the Croatian sign because my dad's Croatian. I have the Canada flag with a rose in it. I don't know. I thought she just looked really fucking cool. And this girl,
Hey, you got that. Can do you do anything with like where you can like flex and then like make it bounce or anything like that, or do you? Because some people do that,
no.
and I like that. Okay, that's the only reason I would ever get a tattoo, is it has to be an interactive one. But yeah, I know other people that, yeah, but that's great too. I mean, I have never got a tattoo myself. I'm thinking about maybe doing it one of these days, but who knows? And I have friends that like they got their whole entire body done. I was like, well, the only problem with me is that like the generation before me and the generation of me and after me, we're gonna look really freaking weird as like 75-year-olds too, with all the tattoos and stuff like that.
Scared.
Like it's gonna be interesting. Like if we look into the future, like 30-40 years, to see what everyone's looking like. So I that'll be at least one of the fascinating things to see. But yeah. And before we wrap things up, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
My sponsor is Ballistic Labs. My mom, and my boyfriend Bert. They're my biggest support systems throughout life and prep. And yeah.
I've always said the unsung heroes of this podcast are the significant others and the family members of these guests, because they put up with all the BS and they do all the prep brain stuff that, I mean, we don't talk about and we don't get too clear on this podcast. I mean, they deal with all that stuff and more. But again, everyone, go and check out Amelia. I highly recommend it. And it was so great to have you on for you to share your journey. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.